You ready?
Behave. Yep, you're on.
All right. Good evening. For those who came out tonight, I appreciate you braving the weather tonight. My name is Dan Durkee. I'm with Warren County Public Health. What I want to do is go over just a few of the safety things and stuff from the room. Then I'm going to introduce our panelists, a little overview of what we're going to cover tonight, and then we'll get into some of the discussion that's going to happen. So just real quick, behind you, there is an emergency exit back to your back to the left. It's back there. There are also two here to the front, and obviously the door you came in on. So feel free, if we need to get out, use those that are most close to you and head on out the door. Restrooms are just outside here to your right, so you can go ahead and use those obviously as well. There is also a live stream happening, like I said earlier. This will be archived, so you'll be able to see this presentation again online if you so choose through the YouTube Live. It will then be archived to the Warren County pages. If somebody is interested in getting the materials that we're presenting tonight from any of our panelists, myself, that's going to be presented through our PowerPoint presentations here shortly. We have a sign-in sheet back. That way you can provide us with an email. We'll send them electronically. We felt, and obviously the conscience, we didn't want to make a whole lot of paper for an evening where we can just transmit it electronically. So, all right. So with that, again, my name is Dan Durkee. I am with Warren County Public Health. The purpose of this meeting tonight, or this meeting, it's really an educational forum for everybody, this is National Public Health Week. And during this week, the National Public Health Associations identify topics of interest or concern within the public health field. And one of the ones they've identified is climate change. So for those who are here wondering about the mechanisms and things, this isn't going to be so much a discussion of the climate change and what's causing, but more what the impacts are of what we're seeing locally and how that impacts our health and well-being here. So it's not going to be a down in the weeds, nuts and bolts kind of thing about the technicalities of it. It's going to be more about what we're seeing and how we're looking to adapt to what the information is that's coming out there through different studies, to our environmental groups, as well as our DEC and New York State Department of Health and what they're seeing. So again, just going to get an overview. I would like to introduce my panelists too. I have a great group who signed on very quickly. As you know, we've been in the COVID epidemic for quite some time. And this is really our first time out, and we thought it was a nice way to get out into the public. And I had a lot of people in mind to reach out to, and I had several of them say thank you for our absolutely. Let me introduce them quick. I'm going to go right down the row in order of which they'll be speaking today. So first, I have Dr. Richard Beach. He is as an infectious disease consultant and travel consultant. He worked for us for quite some time for our travel clinic. Infectious diseases and things. He's a great one to talk to. He practiced in Glens Falls for 35 years, and he serves as serving as the Glens Falls Hospital's infectious control officer and epidemiologist. He retired from private practice in 2011, but he didn't retire completely because he came back to public health and worked again, like I said, in our travel clinics to talk about world diseases. So a vast trove of knowledge there. We keep him on too as medical director as the county. So we appreciate Dr. Leach for coming out and giving some time. Next, I have Anne Marie Mason. She is, in her current role, she is the director of the Office of Emergency Services at Warren County. She's responsible for a lot of the emergency planning and mitigation measures that we see when we talk things about storms, severe weather, and how we can kind of mitigate those impacts. She has 15 years of experience in emergency and risk management and environmental health and safety, education, healthcare, and local government settings. So a vast trove of knowledge there. Then we have Ethan Gabby. He's a community planner at the Warren County Department of Planning and Community Development. Lives in Glens Falls with his kids, so he is a local. He volunteers at the Antarctic Cycling Group, and he is also part of the county's climate smart task force. I guess that's the name of it there.
Yeah, we have a climate task force.
Climate task force. So he heads that up as well. And then we have Kathy Mazzoni. She's currently working with the town of Queensbury as their environmental consultant, coordinating the town's clean energy communities and climate smart community programs. So she is the local expert here for the town of Queensbury and how they're working towards a better climate and better environment. She earned her environmental science degree from Paul Smith College in 2004 after having spent 25 years in healthcare, finance, and administration. And prior to working with the town of Queensbury, she was employed with the Association for Protection of the Adirondacks, the Fund for Lake George Waterkeeper, and the Lake George Association. So a vast trove of knowledge there, a lot more than me. Let's put it that way. Then we have Ben Lackland. He's a software engineer with Nielsen Media, and a member of the Glens Falls Common Council, representing the 4th Ward. He's also a member of the city's sustainability committee. So again, a group that's working on making our communities greener and more sustainable through those types of initiatives that see climate smart communities doing. And then last on our list, not for any other reason than the two were the last ones we had come in and sign on to this, but we have Claudia Bremer. She is a Warren County supervisor representing the Ward of Glens Falls. She's also an attorney practicing environmental law with a background in environmental resources. She is a current member of the New York State Bar Association Environmental Law Section and a member of the New York State Association of Counties Climate Action Committee. So again, we brought these folks in because they are our local experts. For me, as a public health person, I can say that this is relatively new to public health. And the reason I say it's new is climate change was always looked at as an environmental issue. We often forgot that our environment coincides exactly with our health. And it was probably about 7 or 8 years ago that New York State Department of Health says we need to start considering climate change and the way it impacts our health in our communities. And so we are now in that infancy for public health of saying, okay, what is our role here and how can we help? So tonight, that is my goal, is to provide a little bit of overview of what your local health department is doing, along with what all of our experts here are doing for our communities. All right, and so that's our goal. All right, with that, Mike, could you do me a favor? While you're sitting there, could you bring up my slides and I'll kind of go through my presentation and let the experts actually talk. So again, I want to welcome everybody. I thank everybody for being here, again, braving the weather, and hopefully you get a little something out of this. So hopefully this is going to work. All right. There. All right, so it is going to work. Awesome. All right, so again, I'm representing the Warren County Public Health Department, and what we're looking at today is how climate change in our region is impacting public health, what we do to adapt and be ready. And so this is going to be focused on the public health side. Other experts talk about what they're doing in terms of mitigation strategies and greener impacts. So what we know is, with I'm sure we're not doing anything new, but just to have everybody be on the same page, climate change describes a change in the climate conditions such as temperature and rainfall in a region over a long period of time, whereas weather is a condition in the atmosphere over a short period of time. So, we always hear, well, it's really cold this winter. That's 1 point on a very long scale of time. So, again, climate's the description of a long-term pattern of a weather in a particular area. So, climate is different wherever you go. And I don't think we're saying anything new here, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page. At the bottom, again, I just wanted to bring something up that the State Health Department talks a little bit about too, in the Center for Disease Control, that the National Academy of Sciences, the lead scientific body in the U.S., has determined the Earth's surface has risen by about 1 degree Fahrenheit over the last 100 years, with accelerated warming in the past 2 decades. There's new and strong evidence that most of the warming over the last 50 years is attributed to human activity, but again, there is still debate within scientific communities about the roles of natural cycles and processes and human activities. We're not here to get into that part of it, but why we're doing this, we are seeing a change. We're going to talk about what we can do to adapt it. All right, so what's happening in New York? Now, this information is brought in from the from the Department of Environmental Conservation. They are part of a lot of climate change studies, and they have a big responsibility to the state. So what we see is that in New York, the annual average temperature statewide has risen about 2.5 degrees. That's quite considerable. It varies across the country, obviously, depending on where you are. And we've seen that it's across the state. It's not just in one area. So it's statewide where we're seeing this. And what we're hearing from the Department of Environmental Conservation and the modeling software is that these things are going to seem to occur even more readily up north, outside of your city area. So there is some suggestion that we're going to warm faster than even other parts of the state. Which again, we rely on our winter shift. People often run away, they go to Florida. I get that, but there's a lot of people who enjoy our winters. They're important for our ecosystem as well as our health and well-being. Rain and snow like today, right? So overall, the average annual precipitation has increased across New York State since 1900. So that's a pretty large range that we're looking at. We're getting more rain and snow in the winter and less in the summer. So we're seeing, you'll notice the precipitation has changed too in terms of types a little bit. A lot more icing and pellet size stuff, and not the nice snows that you might have remembered back in the day. You talk to snowmobilers and people who enjoy the winter, they're sometimes disappointed here. It's not, again, not like the days of old, as they say. And the models predict increased precipitation is going to continue. That this pattern is going to continue on in New York. We're going to get wetter, warmer, and those can have significant impacts on our health and well-being, and we'll talk about what those are. Just a couple of other things. Sea level rise, obviously in the Adirondacks, we don't necessarily worry directly about sea level rise, but indirectly that can impact us. Again, if you look at migration changes with human populations, a lot of our city centers where our largest populations are, as those things become inundated, they may force people up and out, and they may move into our region, which increases population. And whenever your population moves, different things come up, whether they're good, bad, or indifferent. So you have to adapt to those population changes if they're coming from cities to smaller towns, villages. Can your infrastructure handle it? Those types of things. Again, I'm not going to read too much about this, but we definitely know that the prediction, the models are saying quite a bit of sea level rise is possible along the New York coastlines, which means we have to be prepared up here as people move out. We saw during the pandemic, people moved, and they moved out of big cities into smaller areas. We have a pretty nice place to come to. So, natural resources. So what do we see actually happening out in the environment and why this is a big deal? So what we see right now is on average spring begins about a week earlier than it did a few decades ago. Leaf days, I mean, being an novice, I forgot that they studied these things, that the DEC, and then people take notes on this. But it's amazing that things have moved ahead, by 8-9 days, and that's pretty big because winter plays an important role in how our ecosystems survive up here. Snow cover is decreasing. That's important because we look at our lakes and our streams and our freshwater systems. They rely a lot on that snowpack. We see what California is dealing with. We're not there. It's just interesting to see how these changes are happening. You see pollinating bees earlier. I saw my first bee last week on my front porch, and so it's kind of interesting to see. And then we're seeing changes in breeding birds, oceanic populations of fish. Those all impact us in a different way because of moving populations, and this document we'll talk about, insects and things can bring disease. And so we have to be prepared as they continue to move and migrate. So, all right. So let's get into how does all this impact chronic disease? That's my kind of piece here. For those who don't know, Warren County is an aging county. We are on average about 5 years older than the rest of the state. We also have higher rates of chronic disease because we have an older population. And that's, again, that's the natural order of things. It's really what we see. And it's one of the biggest concerns that we see in public health every year. It's something we actually look to address. Some of the diseases we look at when we're looking at climate change, any of the cardiovascular diseases, they're often can be exacerbated by heating, degrees. So the more warmth you have, the longer, hotter summers you get, the more we can see stresses like high blood pressure, heart attack can actually continue to rise during those times. We see things like lung, respiratory diseases, chronic diseases like asthma and COPD. They can often be exacerbated because with warming, we see increased pollution levels near the surfaces, which obviously for anybody who has any breathing issues, along with allergies, pollution itself can lead to some exacerbations. Again, people with cancer, their bodies are already fighting. Anytime we put more stress on it, it makes for poorer outcomes, diabetes, obesity, those things as well. And then anytime we have people who are dealing with medications that can affect the way their bodies regulate their systems. So as heat becomes a bigger issue, those are people we have to look at and say, how can I protect those folks? And how do we adapt? Cooling centers and things like that, where things that we never talked about. And anyway, Marie's going to talk. We have to think about now cooling centers and ways to help people as our temperatures continue to rise over the summer and get longer heat waves possible. All right. So this is an actual map. I forget the year. I should put that on there. One of our heat waves just recently. We know that the stressors of heat now are not something just confined to city dwellings or high density populations. For those who don't know, the way it's defined in upstate is any time you have temperatures above 90 degrees for an extended period of 24 hours or more, that can be considered not a heat wave, but something that can exacerbate heat conditions, and it's something to be aware of. For the city, it's 95. So that's something in the past you didn't ever really think about, but they are cutoffs. And for upstate, it is 90 degrees. We see a lot more of those days. They seem to be coming more frequently. Okay. And why is that important? Well, anytime you have those diseases, it puts stresses on people, it puts stresses on our medical facilities and our medical web. So again, there's likely to be increased heart attacks, stroke, heat strokes, heat-related illnesses that we have to prepare people for. Without that preparation, without that knowledge, as your environment changes, if you're not aware of what's happening, you're not willing or able to adapt, the outcomes become a little bit worse. So we want to make sure we're encouraging people to find out what they can do when these events are occurring. These diabetics, more the applications of their treatment. Poor air quality, we've already talked about at the ground level. It certainly causes problems with children, adults with asthma, people with COPD, chronic lung conditions, so we need to be aware of that. And then anybody that's again, vascular system issues like high blood pressure, those things are all going to be exacerbated. So we have to be aware of helping people identify how they can cope with our changing climate. Public health is the extreme weather events. They seem to be happening more frequently. Why this is a big deal is we know people with chronic conditions have a lot of things that you have to consider. Extreme events. They require evacuation or staying in sheltering. They need extra help. They may not be able to evacuate. So we have to be able to plan to help those folks who aren't able to necessarily help themselves or may have adverse outcomes because of their conditions being exacerbated by what's going on. Again, we know mass shelter here is something we don't think too much about. That would be a difficult thing to pull off without having planning ahead of time. And so those are things that public health is looking at. Because when those people come into a care center, you have to be able to care for them. And if we don't think about these things with our extreme events, we can have a lot of outcomes that we don't want to see within a mass care shelter. Environmental pollutants and mold, when flooding occurs, that can also exacerbate people. So how do we help people recover from those events, considering what the conditions may be, and their financial piece as well. So as public health, these are things we're starting to look at, and how do we cope and how do we adapt. And the answers aren't there yet, but without knowledge or acknowledging that our climate has changed, regardless of its cause, regardless of what the underlying is, we still have to say how to now. Okay. We also know that there are certain populations that we have to be aware of that have a greater likelihood of having difficulty with, again, larger weather events and changing climate. We see older adults that are trying to help themselves and they have access to air conditioning, they get medication, things like that we may take for granted. And so for public health, we have to think of these things as some of these events occur. Okay. Minority races and ethnicities often tend to be in locations where a lot of the effects of climate change occur more readily. There's less planning sometimes for them. There's less mitigation measures taken because there's no advocacy, or it's just something that is not thought about at the time when something happens. So you have to be aware of those so we can help that. Everybody needs that equal hand in getting help when they need it. The other thing we see with climate change and these disasters is mental disorders. Again, we're autism, Alzheimer's, dementia, but just general mental health. A lot of you felt that way during COVID. The same thing happens during acute events as well, which if they're happening more frequently with climate change, again, our health systems have to be aware and if and when it happens. About how we allocate resources and plan for these types of things. The Center for Disease Control has steps, right? What they do. They talk about building resilience against climate effects. So it's basically making our communities better able to deal and recover from, even after events that occur that are related to climate change. I'll put this up here. If you want to see this, again, this is a Centers for Disease Control model. It's very well explained, not to get into the details, but I can tell you that a lot of this is what's guiding New York State Department of Health's outlook on climate change, as well as county, because again, we follow a lot of the state law, which follows CDC. which is nice because then there is a format there as well, but it's to help reach our general population. So again, this is just called RACE, anticipating climate impact, assessing our vulnerabilities, projecting the disease burden, what it's going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Our water supplies, and insects, and things like that. What are the public health interventions that are available? What are most suitable for our region? Again, the Northeast is different than the Southeast and the West, so they have to do something that fits with where we live. How to plan? Again, I talk about development, implement, climate, health adaptation plan. What is our plan? What is our outlook? So that way we can plan for resources that we're going to need and get resources that we maybe are already ready available, and then working with our partners to be able to mitigate a lot of those things. And then finally, evaluate impact and improve the quality of our activities. So just because you do something doesn't mean it made a difference. We want to be able to evaluate what we're trying to do and see, is it actually working? And a lot of our climate smart initiatives in our communities are showing those things. They can go back and look. So there's a lot going on. Again, this is a very high overview of public health, and we are relatively novice at it because we always consider it an environmental piece, but it absolutely does impact our health, and we want people to be aware. So that is it. I'm going to shorten. Again, I went a little longer than I wanted to, but here's my contact information. My plan is that all the panel speak. So everybody, our infectious disease expert. So thank you.
It's getting hot. And thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this, and thank you for putting this conference together. I think it's terribly important. Thank you guys for coming out. I did not talk very much about some of the stuff. Am I to this?
No,
Yeah, I look at
Say that.
I knew it was,
My preference because I am listening to it.
yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that could be the microphone?
I mean, it's just,
Looking at in
if
slides.
it's fixed later and their connection, because I brought this in here.
Already, he's a dynamo of energy, and I can see the wheels turning in his brain as he's looking at all the stuff that he has to do. He has been so wrapped up with COVID in these past couple of years. He used to have full head of hair. Well, he's terrific, and I anticipate that with the rest of the panelists, we're going to be able to put together before you what is really a pretty progressive community with Dan at the helm. Okay, so, all right, can we raise that just a little bit?
I think it's just formatting on Dr. Lynch. We're having some issues,
All right.
but
All right, so I'm going to talk about more detail than he has provided, and I would point out at the very start that we are in a terrible crisis, the greatest crisis that humanity has ever faced. I sincerely believe this. I'm terribly concerned, and so I'm very happy that you're here as well. Okay. When I'm talking this,
yeah, there's something going on with the format.
we're also listening to the right here. Well, so I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction, which would take some of the stuff that Dan has already spoken about. I'm going to talk about what's going on in the area and repeat some of the stuff that weather patterns, but especially detailing diseases. I'm going to put together a little bit more to do you on mental health and rising seas for the reason that immediately seem so impactful in our community. They really are. I'll try to, and then I'll try to give a summary. I'm not going to. There you go.
Is that better? Okay.
That's better. I'm not going to put before you things like this, and maybe you recognize this slide. This came from the New York Times in February 2020, I think it was, when there was, and there still is, horrible wildfires in Australia, South Australia. And on top of it, tremendous drought, terribly destructive wildfires, huge winds, flora, fauna. The first wildfires that we had in the West actually poisoned some of our air here in the summer and the summer before. I'm probably we remember. And that impacted on some of the chronic diseases that Dan was talking about. People with asthma, chronic lung disease, actually deteriorated under the stuff that we were breathing that we thought was a campfire. You can imagine how it was, you know. Okay, now here's the global problem. So, as Dan has mentioned, we have already experienced a rate of rise 1.1 degrees C. I'm telling you now that I'm afraid it is inevitable. We're going to have a rise up to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the mid-century. The hope has always been, as particularly specified, as you may remember, in the Paris Accords of 2015, which everybody signed on to, that was a legally binding document, which you know, the United States pulled out of, and then in under the two different administrations. And by the way, we lost an awful lot of leadership, credibility, and time and energy in what we know we need to do. And I'm afraid that we're far enough behind at this point that we're not going to meet those Paris Accord goals, that we are virtually inevitably going to be at that 1.5 degree centigrade rise by mid-century. Okay,
There you go.
And I'm afraid it's inevitable that we're going to reach that 1.5 degrees C and maybe more if we don't get our asses in here. And that's what it amounts to, folks. We got to do it. We can't just talk the talk. We got to walk the walk. All right. Temperatures have been so heavy, climate change disasters. You know this. And the more the degrees we rise in the global averages, we're going to see more and more and more until we get toward burning up. More of exactly what? Well, a rise of 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius is going to make a world where there will be more mass extinctions. Rich and poor alike will face increased deaths from extreme heat. And you know, we've had massive heat deaths in India. We had a lot of deaths in the the northwest of America. In British Columbia last summer, you remember? Terrible heat waves up to 104. They'd never experienced anything like that before. And that's going to keep happening. Epidemics and pandemics of infectious diseases are going to be more common. Food and water supplies are going to be increasingly compromised. Desertification, raging fires, rising seas, and so forth and so on. Communities are going to be unfit for habitation, and people are going to have to move, and mentioned. And that means that there are going to be populations fighting over increasing scarce resources. And then we're going to see social and political upheavals that I can't even imagine. I mean, it just sounds terrible, doesn't it? But this is a very, very real potential. I mean, it's just, how do I dare say things like that? Well, you guys have seen this happen. The IPCC 6 assessment report has been released since the start of last year. Have you? Yes? No?
Yes.
All right. So you know something about this, and you know, it's vast, and I have not by any means read all of it, but I've certainly gone through a lot of it. The first of the releases came in August of last year. Then 6 weeks ago, the second came up, and then the third. The first one was the physical science basis, and it detailed with absolute certainty that this is not climate change the way there have been climate changes in the past. This is man-made. This is because all that stuff in the like dump in the system. What's going on? It's appalling. Real best scientists analyzing the best data. No questions about it anymore. Period. The second report came out, and that showed the impacts and adaptations and vulnerabilities. Antonio Gutierrez called that one there a red code for humanity, and he called it one an atlas of human suffering. Because what it did was it detailed the suffering that's been incurred to date with the rise of 1.1 degrees, and anticipates, tenth of a degree by tenth of a degree, what's going to happen with the progressive rises, how much worse it's going to be. And you can look at these incredible charts showing the devastation that's coming our way. That's what's backing up what I was telling you in the previous slide. it's appalling. Now, there are some possibilities of adaptation if we slow climate change down enough so that we can develop, for example, cooling systems and the like that some of us here in the panel are going to describe in more detail of what's going on up here. The third thing just came out this Monday, right? And looking back over these previous 8 months, the first report said, oh my God, we're in worse trouble than we thought back then. And again, we got all doom and gloom because in this report they're saying there are tools. And the one tool, of course, is to move renewable. We're doing a pretty good job of that. We've dropped the costs of renewable so much so that they're cheaper now than our fossil fuel-based fuels. And electric cars, you betcha, heat pumps, the whole business. I think I'm talking to the choir here. And finally, of course, underline the fact that political will is the major problem, and God knows the problem. Okay. I won't go into this any further, just to show you that this is a graph. I think this came from New York State. Each New York State, and do that later all the way to the president, and draw a mean. That's what that dark is. That's the mean of all of the temperatures recorded in that graph. You can clearly see that at the beginning of the 1900s, everything was below, and here in the beginning of the 2000s, everything was up. Well, if you drew a rising line, it would go up like that, and it would keep going up at a curve rate like that. And that's what's going to happen. And I won't go further because Dan has already mentioned these things. But by the way, New Yorkers produce more greenhouse gases than all America and Mexico combined. New Yorkers, just our state. Okay, water in New York, and Dan has mentioned some of this stuff, so I won't go over it in great detail. But yes, exactly. So water. Because I think it's really going on. There's a couple of 30 years worth of data, and no change over these 30 years, increase or decrease. We're talking about the skies. And to the right, with your poor kind that's one thing, and if you go that way, and candy type colors, that's the other. So what we're seeing is a tremendous shift over these 30 years. Desertification. I live in Las Vegas. Who lives on Colorado anymore? I mean, it's just appalling what's happening. And of course, we're up here enjoying the best of our life. We're in England. All right, vector-borne diseases. Now, if you take the range of 2004 to 2018 that sort of runs the graph, these are numbers of cases reported to the New York State of insect-borne disease. I'm talking, of course, mosquitoes and ticks. The blue is mosquitoes. Very few vector-borne mosquito diseases. The orange is tick. And you all know this. Year by year, you can see this point out to you. This data is probably totally fallacious. These are reported cases to New York State. We are clearly seeing an increase every darn year. I can't tell the linear asymptotic or what it is, progression of Lyme disease as most particularly. And it's not being reported. For one thing, we had COVID, and the state was tired of that they couldn't process the data. They got it. Of course, the clinicians probably weren't even talking to the state about these things because everybody was so worried about what to do about the COVID. So I won't bore you with the great details of the beasts that we call mosquitoes up here. Just extremely briefly, the Cluculus pipiens and Anopheles are the two mosquitoes that we mainly see here. This is a slightly smaller one, pretty innocuous. This is a little bigger, causes a little bit more of a welt. These two are not very important mosquitoes from the point of view of carrying diseases. Both of them carry dog hookworm, dog heartworm, I'm sorry, and are the reasons why you vaccinate all your dogs. But the little culex can give you a little West Nile virus, not much. This is a common house mosquito we all have all the time. Our concern is this Aedes albopictus, which is also called Asian tiger mosquito, called so because it has these dramatic stripes on it. And it's a little bit bigger, a little bit more aggressive, bites nastier than the other two, and it's coming our way. And the big concern is West Nile virus, because that's what it's bearing. All right, West Nile virus. We're seeing that in these distributions. The problem is all downstate. It's Long Island, it's the coast of New York, the coast of Connecticut, down along the Atlantic coast that way. And we have seen a little teeny bit north and east of us, oddly, in Vermont. But we in our area haven't really seen West Nile at this point. It's a nasty disease, but it's coming our way because the Aedes albopictus is coming our way, the Asian tiger. So we got to be prepared for that. Okay, you know, our most dangerous animal. There ain't no bears, no problem. You know, ticks are terrible. And it seems like it's getting worse. Well, the Ixodes scapularis is the name of our tick. And that's what it looks like. That's no news to anybody. I would point out to you that the diseases that it carries, Lyme disease, anaplasma, these guys, I see very many of these last three, get worse and worse and worse. Please protect yourselves. When it started in 1977 in Lyme, Connecticut, we didn't know anything about Lyme disease. And look where the Ixodes has carried it since 77. It's appalling what's happening. So there's another tick in our way. It's called the Lone Star tick, famous because it has that incredible dot on the back of it. It's not named after Texas, interestingly enough. It's also called Amblioma americanum, and it carries these diseases, which I wish I had time to go over because they're perfectly fascinating. Especially this alpha-gal allergy thing. It's one of the most interesting diseases I've come across in a long time, relatively new. Hitting all the people who are marching the Appalachian Trail down south, is clearly marching our way. So you see that that's the northernmost advancement of the Amblioma americanum, and we're just at the southern border of that northern march. And this was a couple of years ago. So I think we're going to be picking up this tick perhaps this year. As far as I know, we have not seen any as yet, but I'm darn afraid that we will. Oops. There we go. All right, now, that first slide that I showed you had on its right-hand side a picture of a moon setting over a glacier. And there's the moon setting again. This is a glacier on the Antarctic Peninsula, and I want to take you there really quickly just for interest's sake. There's a NASA map of the continent of Antarctica. There's the Antarctic Peninsula. The tip of South America is right here. And I had the privilege in February of 2020 to take a trip there with my son. My son took those pictures. And we traveled along that coast of the Antarctic Peninsula, and that picture was taken right about there, opposite what is the Larsen ice shelf, that purple thing. Those ice shelves are in purple. Now, the reason I'm talking to you about this is because of what's happening down there. Oh, went a little too far. Wait a minute. There we go. The concern is the rising seas. And what's happening here is that the Greenland ice shelves, the Antarctic ice shelves are melting. And as they melt, yes, they float the ice off into the water, but those are the sea ices. And the sea ices represent a barrier to the glaciers that are in the mountains on top. And when those barriers are gone, the melting of the glaciers goes right down into the ocean, and we're seeing sea level rise to a startling degree over this past century, about a foot. And we're bound to see much more of that. We think that a huge percentage of the Greenland and Antarctic ice floes have already melted, something in the order of magnitude almost half, and the rest of it is going fast. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, folks. Even if we stopped all of our fossil fuel burning tomorrow, everything would continue on because of the vastness of the masses that we're talking about here. It's already written. We're beyond the pale. So we're going to see continued sea level rising. Sea level rising is not just from ice melt, it's also from thermal expansion. 100 molecules of H2O at 30 degrees, 100 molecules of H2O at 45 degrees, 100 molecules of H2O at 80 degrees, thermal expansion. That's contributing about 1/3 of the sea level rise. The problem, of course, is that with this inevitable sea level rise, we're going to see huge cities flooded. We're talking Bangkok, Mumbai, Miami. We're talking about incursions into Boston and New York. I mean, we're talking about really impactful changes that are basically already written. So, you know, they really need to hurry up downstate. One of the biggest problems, a huge number of people are going to have to migrate because their homes are going to be underwater. And what does that mean? Okay, briefly about mental health that Dan also mentioned, and I won't go over this in great detail, but this is really the youngsters. Asking, tell us about your emotional reaction, your state of mind in relationship to climate change. And, you know, so we have anxieties, and I can't quite read them from here. This one is anger here. I'll point to that extremely briefly. I go on to the next slide. You know, your in the upper corner here says that we are being betrayed by those in power. They are failing us, and you can read it. I can't read it. She is angry. I mean, you know, I just love her look, and you know, she's galvanizing a huge wave of youngsters, and well, she should. Those youngsters are inheriting. Okay, who's she mad at? Well, she's mad at the fossil fuel companies, and look, I mean, there are 100 of them, but you know, the biggest right here: Exxon, Shell, BP, Chevron, right? They are contributing massive amounts to the pillaging of our planet, folks. And she's mad at the banks because they're funding these guys. They're equally guilty of what's going on. And look at the names here. Is there anybody in this room who does not do some kind of business with these banks that are listed here? Anybody? I don't. I mean, I do business with the Bank of America. Look, I'm going to take a brief aside. There is an organization called Third Act. Now, many of you are much younger than should be for joining Third Act because it's for only over. It's organized by Bill McKibben, whose name you probably know. If you don't know, you should. And Bill McKibben is a fantastic pioneer in the whole business about climate change and environmental leadership. He's brought this together as of last fall. And what his basic idea is to be the other end of the spectrum from the Greta Thunberg. And counsel them if they want counseling, be there for them if they need us, but then also on our own, as baby boomers with a fair amount of money in the bank, with these folks, put pressure on them. You get out of the business of lending these terrorists, these environmental terrorists, money, or we're out of here, baby. And I think that's exactly the right thing to do. Okay, then she's also mad at the politicians like Joe Manchin, who stymied our Build Back Better bill in the fall, which was a very foresighted, well-structured, well-planned bill. It's a damn shame. And, you know, who is Joe Manchin? I mean, this guy, the reason he's rubbing his hands there together is because he just received his dividend checks from the coal mining investments that he has. $500,000 each year. Dividends, not his salary from the Senate. And it might have been the time that he got $500,000 from these groups. Okay, I gotta get out of here. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. All right, so.
Just gotta give everybody a chance. I'm sorry, just looked at the time.
Okay, so I'm not gonna give you the summary of what's going on. That's my daughter and new baby. You can tell I'm passionate. I leave you with this. From the first book of the Trilogy of the Ring, Tolkien, Frodo says, I wish it, well, you can read it better than I do. And, you know, I would point out to you that all we have to decide is what to do with the time we have. That's what we must decide to do. Thank you. I'm sorry to be so long.
No, I'm sorry. I want to thank Dr. Leach. I didn't think we have still a whole set of panels, and I just want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity. So I apologize, Dr. Leach. We hope this is a starting off point. I'm going to hold questions until the end. I really, truly, we have a lot of other panelists, so I would really like an opportunity for them to speak, and then at the end, we'll definitely allow you to speak. Okay? But we are short on time. We are just, unfortunately, we're really. I went too long, so we just want to give you a chance. So, doing my moderator job, sorry. But actually, I am Marie Mason with our Office of Emergency Services, talking about plans and mitigation measures that we're taking here, addressing a lot of the things happening with our climate adaptation. So, Anne Marie, I'll get your slides up. This tab was down. So this tab on the side. Okay. All right, let me see here. Yes. What do you got up there? Is that okay?
No,
Okay.
this is great.
Okay.
Yep. So climate change, how it affects emergency management, it's the ability to prepare for, recover, adapt. All right, just a nice little example there of some of the effects of climate change. I don't go into too much detail because a lot of moving parts. So, you know, some of this we're going to see more heat-related illnesses, heat cramps, and heat stroke, animal extinctions, more fires, more storms. Everything is just going to increase frequency and the amount. Evidence to show that global climate is rapidly changing, trending warm. The results of climate change are anticipated to bring about changing weather patterns, such as extreme rain events, warmer winters, and more frequent heat waves. The changes will impact emergency preparedness, public health, infrastructure, among other aspects of our daily lives. We need to look towards adapting local infrastructure and operations to the impacts of global climate change. Communities are working to increase their resilience against hazards, including extreme heat, drought, flooding, and wildfires. These risks are hazards that are often exacerbated by climate change, adaptation to climate change, and climate change creates resilience. One goal we kind of have to look towards is prevention. So being prepared can be more valuable, more cost-effective than post-hazard response. So which threats and hazards can affect our community is what we kind of want to look towards to try to combat some of this. What we're seeing is ice jams, severe weather, increased rainfall amounts, and heat wave are pretty much most of the things we're going to see here. If these occurred, what impacts would these threats and hazards have on our community? Well, flooding, economic losses, power outages, illnesses, heat-related, and disease. So these things all kind of have a domino effect. One thing happens, and then many other things will follow. Based on those impacts, what capabilities should our community have in place? So if you live in a flood-prone area, or you realize that we're seeing much more higher rainfall amounts, which probability is your flood probability going up? So we need to look at flood insurance. Develop your own emergency plans for your own households. Adopt more resilient building codes, which you might see happening in some of the municipalities, and hazard mitigation plans. Global climate change has already had observable effects on the environment. The glaciers have shrunk, which I knew have been covered. The ice on rivers and lakes is breaking up earlier. Plant natural ranges have shifted, and trees are flowering sooner. So this is just a few things of what we're doing in my department, Office of Emergency Services. We're developing heat excessive response plans, specifically designating primary and secondary cooling areas. In those locations, depending on how long the heat waves last, you might find yourself in one of these for more than a day or two, especially if you don't have air conditioning, or perhaps you lost power because of the storms and the heat. So updating with our soil and water department, the county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. So that plan is something that you have to have current. If the plan is current within municipalities, they're eligible for funding from FEMA to help improve some of our roadways, our culverts, and things of that nature. More exercises focused on plans affected by climate change. So we would be doing exercises setting up cooling shelters, dam failures, beaver dam failures, flooding, power outages, precipitated by weather-related events, and working with non-governmental organizations such as the Red Cross for assistance with shelter if needed. Give you a couple minutes to look at that too. So the CDC, the Social Vulnerability Index, and they use census data for all the information that's on here. And what this is they're determining the social vulnerability of every census tract. The census tracts are subdivisions of counties from which the county collects, the census collects statistical data. So this SVI ranks each tract on 15 social factors, including poverty, lack of vehicle access, crowded housing, and groups them into 4 related themes. Maps of the 4 themes are going to be on the next slide, but what this does is it shows you areas within the county where maybe we might need to do some more education, some more training on any of the things that are going to help us get through some of this results from climate change. So as you can see, the yellow marks in the county there, that's the lowest section, so they have, they're less vulnerable to some of the effects of climate change, that the effects it's having on our emergency management. So in some areas, like the highest ones are the blue shaded areas, so maybe we might look at those areas and decide we might need to focus on doing some training for those groups and getting more involved in that area of the county. It's kind of nice that they can drill it down so much. So these are some of the other things that they put this all together to come about. It's they look at socioeconomic status, household composition, disability, race, ethnicity, language, and housing type transportation. So just put together a few things that you guys can do to help yourselves in these situations. Sign up for alerts and warnings. There are many areas where you can get alerts and warnings from. You can get them from New York Alerts. Go right onto New York State's website, sign up for New York Alerts. You can get the alerts via your cell phones, you can get emails, you can get texts, you can get all kinds of media ways for you to get alerts. Make an evacuation plan. Make a communication plan. If you have people you need to get in touch with. Let me just go back to this other screen real quick. The thing is, when you develop your plans, practice your plans. Go over them with your family. This is where I'm going to be. This is where I'm going to contact you. This is where we need to meet up, because you never know what's going to happen and what you're going to have available for yourself. So pre-planning is very important. Practice your plans. Build an emergency supply kit. Sometimes you might have things that are specific to yourselves that you need to put in there, but there will be also a list of some things coming up shortly, and I do have some handouts on the tables there with all the information. Safeguard your documents. I would recommend, if you have space in your home for a fireproof safe, make sure you put all your important documents in the safe. Marriage license, birth certificates, make sure all those are protected. Document and insure your property. If you could suffer some sort of an economic loss based on some storm that you've had, document and insure your property and make sure that you guys can get yourselves back whole again. Sometimes not every storm will rise to having FEMA funds or states of emergency, where you would have to go to your own insurance company. So make sure you've got enough to take care of yourself. neighbors. Sometimes you need neighbors to look into, or you have neighbors that are good at something that would help you. So work together and find out what's happening in your neighborhood. Right now, attend these things that and get involved. So this is a little bit more about New York alerts. That's what it looks like on the website. If you Google it. Types of notification they have: severe weather, transportation, amber alerts, consumer protection, public health, sex offender. You can also sign up for air quality alerts. Most of them will come from Long Island area, New York area, the city area, but who knows what's going to be happening here in the next few years. So make sure you sign up for all alerts that are very important to you and to what's going to affect you. And these are the ways that you can get notified. When signing up, you can select multiple ways and customize the types of alerts you get. Make a plan. There's a website right there. Make a plan, ready.gov. Ready.gov has a lot of information on it for any need you might have. Definitely visit it and see what's going to work for you there. Who will you contact? Where will you meet? Is there anyone in your home that has special needs? Include your pets in the plan. It's very important. A lot of times we don't think about that, but there are places that will take them. They're not generally the place that will take families though. So you need to make sure you've got a plan for your pets. And again, practice your plans. Okay, so for what should you put in your supply kit? So remember, your kit depends on your own needs. And once you look at the basic items, consider what unique needs your family might have, such as supplies for pets or seniors. Use the list below to get started. Water, non-perishable food, prescription medicines. Make sure you have enough prescription medicines, especially if you're on any type of maintenance drugs. Extra batteries or alternative power sources. Matches in a waterproof container. Paper plates, plastic cups, utensils, paper towels, sleeping bags. You just never know what you're going to need. So these are good basic supplies to have in your kit. Whistle to signal for help. Toothbrushes, soap, local maps, flashlights. Leatherman tools are really great to put in your kit because then you might not need some of the other things that are on there. Yep, that's it. Okay. So here are some references that are on here. And like Darren said, if you put down your email address, I can send you these emails. That way you can just grab the links right off the PDF that would come. So ready.gov, FEMA.gov, CDC. There's also, if you want to FEMA, get a national risk index, and you can also drill it down right to the county. And you can see where Warren County falls with a lot of these hazards. And make a plan. So Office of Emergency Services does have a Facebook. I don't know if you guys use Facebook a lot, but if you follow our Facebook page, we also put updates on there whenever there's any road closures, ice jams, anything like that. They go up on our Facebook page as quickly as we get the information. So feel free to follow that. And also you can go to our website. On our website, there is the current hazard mitigation plan that's in place right now. And every municipality has a section in the hazard mitigation plan. So depending on where you're from, you can go online to it and you can look and see what areas of vulnerabilities are specific in that plan. And you can see what your town is going to be working towards or working on, because there's lots of projects in there as well. So it's a lot of information to read up on, but that's about all I have. Is there any questions?
We're going to just hold questions if you're okay until the end.
Yes.
Yeah, just that way we can get through. All right.
Okay, cool.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
So Ethan, you're next on the docket here, so I'll get your slides up for you while you come up. There's a little, this little tile on the side. You can advance your slides up or down if you're comfortable with that. Not
Good, I've only got about 4, so.
All right, I can advance them for you if you need, so I'll bring yours up while you're getting ready.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Ethan Gabby, I'm a assistant county planner at Warren County. I've been at the job for about a year. So, this event is more about, hey, the public health impacts of climate change. Our department, we've sort of taken it from the greenhouse gas reduction perspective. So some of the preventative measures. But everything we like to do sort of has to touch the triple bottom line. So we like to look at the economics of it, environmental impacts, and our impacts on the community. So just to give you a quick snapshot of some of the recent initiatives that we've been up to. All right. Cool. All right. So one of the first things that we got started with last year was an organics management plan. Warren County recently, in 2021, developed a solid waste management plan. And we found in that plan that about 30% of our waste is otherwise compostable. And there's direct connections here to greenhouse gas emissions and also public health. There's been a little bit of controversy over the fact that we burn a lot of our garbage in this community. And the other portion is landfill. And that contributes a lot of methane and other greenhouse gases. So what we did is we put together a grant application to the Climate Smart Communities Program, which is to the Department of Environmental Conservation. They provide a lot of funding for community projects like this. And we want to take a look at strategies to reduce the amount of organic waste that we're putting into the waste stream. So we did get funded for this. County hired solid waste coordinators here tonight. It's really important in starting to get a handle on where our solid waste goes. The objective of this whole study that we kick off later this year is going to be to, look at some pilot programs for composting, look at what scale we can do this, if there's public or private partnerships we can do. At the end of the day, we'd like to save, county taxpayers money, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, hopefully reduce any of these potential negative public health impacts of, not only burning garbage, but also the transport of solid waste. You'll find that in a lot of situations, either in environmental justice communities that have more of these garbage trucks going through it. So the less we're relying on truck waste through communities, the more we can start to address some of the public health and environmental justice issues as well. So this will be an exciting project. I think over the course of next year we're going to dig into this, look at a lot of different stakeholders. It should be a publicized event, and there'll be opportunities for the public to get engaged with this. So this is again more on the greenhouse gas reduction side of things. I know Dr. Leach and Dan really did lay out the impact of public health, but we're still in the mindset of like, hey, we got to continue to stop putting more greenhouse gas emissions into the environment. So we're trying to look at a electric vehicle fleet initiative. At the county, we have 200-something vehicles. So we started taking a look at it and saying, all right, how do we at least start introducing electric vehicles into our fleet? So we started looking at best practices from other counties. We looked at what we do have. Started talking to department heads about, hey, where could we actually take some of these vehicles, convert them to electric? And so we've been doing a lot of the logistics at this point. Right now, we're at the stage where we're coordinating with other counties on a group purchasing arrangements to get favorable rates on electric vehicles. The issue right now is just that we can't get electric vehicles due to supply chain issues. But we're doing a lot of groundwork right now. What we hope with even 3, 4, 5 of these electric vehicles a year, not only will we be having the impact of just taking a few of these cars off the road, internal combustion engines, but also to be a good education opportunity, because we do have a lot of employees at the county, and if they're given the opportunity to use an electric vehicle if they otherwise wouldn't have purchased on their own, you can say, hey, this is a reliable vehicle, it works, and it will be a good sort of ambassador program. Then, just thinking about upcoming opportunities for involvement. I know a lot of you here are just members of the community, not necessarily involved with local government as much. One of the things I'm working on at the county level and with Ben at the Glens Falls level is having conversations about complete streets. We're going to be reaching out to different communities and other members of, DPWs, other elected officials, anyone that's interested in it, start looking at our transportation networks. In New York State, it's about 47% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from automobiles and other transportation. So complete streets are streets that are designed for walking, biking, people of all abilities, in addition to cars. We think this is a really good opportunity to improve quality of life, improve public health. A lot of the chronic conditions we have in our area, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, a lot of these things could be addressed by more active transportation. So we have this great opportunity here to take a look at our transportation systems. Will improve the quality of life for residents, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve public health, and not only that, we rely a lot on tourism for our local economies. So, making our communities more attractive spots to visit by foot, but will also be a good opportunity. So we're going to be doing some workshops on this coming up this year. We have yet to set a date on it, but we'll send out some publicity materials. It'd be great if members of the public could find ways to attend. We'll put it out on the county website, and as long as you're sort of, attending these webinars and taking these messages to your elected officials, anyone that's involved with the design of transportation infrastructure, it's a really good opportunity to sort of, reduce that greenhouse gas emissions, address public health. So that's it right now. We're doing other things, but I can answer those questions. We have a little more time.
Thank you, Ethan. I'm sorry, I don't want to make our speaker feel like they're rushing, but I just keep looking at the time, and it's such a huge topic, so we'll get Kathy right up here. Get your slides going.
Nice to see you all today, and thank you, Dan, for inviting me to participate in this National Public Health Week program. I'm Kathy Mazzoni, working with the town of Queensbury and their clean energy community and climate smart community programs. I'm starting with this. The town was awarded a bronze certification by New York State Department of Environmental Conservation last year. We are not alone regionally. Glens Falls and Warren County also have received this bronze certification. And it basically shows that the town of Queensbury has done a lot of sustainable programs for many years. Oops, I'm sorry.
It's sensitive.
That is,
For you.
the town of Queensbury, I was basically invited to talk about the climate action initiatives that are going on in the town of Queensbury, and hoping that some of these things we can encourage others to join us and to get more involved. In 2017, the town board initiated and approved the involvement in clean energy communities program with NYSERDA, and in 2019, we morphed into and started working with the climate smart communities, and that's the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. So sorry about this.
You want me to advance them? I can do it for you if you want.
It's a little twitchy.
It is.
One of the first projects that the town of Queensbury did was they completed the high action impacts through the Clean Energy Communities program, and that the town was awarded $50,000 from NYSERDA. And with that money, the committee decided to replace all the high pressure sodium decorative street lighting in the town of Queensbury with LED bulbs, saving a tremendous amount of energy every year. In addition, the remaining money purchased a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle for the town staff. The next big project that the committee did was launch a Solarize Campaign. And the committee decided that we wanted to invite all of Warren County to be involved in this program. So we called ourselves Southern Adirondacks for Solar. And this happened in 2018. We did a full summer season. Oops. I don't know why I can't catch on here.
Which way would you like to go here?
I'd like to go right after the last slide, going back. Yeah, no. That one.
Okay. If you want, I can just advance them for you if that'll be easy.
Thank you,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're
The Solarize Campaign was very active during that season. We did programs at up in Chestertown at the Main Street Ice Cream Parlor, up Yonda Farms in Bolton Landing. We were up at the Hub in Grand Lake, Queensbury Hotel, and many other venues that we invited the public to come in and encourage the installation of solar panels on their property. At the end of the program, the NYSERDA announced that Queensbury had one of the most successful Solarize campaigns that they had seen. One of the first things that the clean energy community did was they had done a couple of the high impact actions that were required by NYSERDA. NYSERDA gave the town $2,500, And we installed at the water department, the water treatment plant, an electric vehicle charging station. And this prompted the town to purchase an electric vehicle for that department and the staff there. So they had been talking about that for a while, but this initiated it. Recently, there was a program from NYSERDA and National Grid that actually paid to install electric vehicle charging stations on municipal property. And the town was awarded that grant and installed 3 different locations at the town of Queensbury, 6 separate electric vehicle charging stations. Another initiative that was very, very important, and it's one of the things that we keep talking about. I'm also involved in the Zero Waste Warren County Committee. And we, in 2020, we actually planned a reuse, recycle, repair cafe day at SUNY Adirondack, and that was canceled due to COVID. But in 2021, we actually had the reuse, recycle day at the West Glens Falls Volunteer Fire Company. And there were 10 vendors there that collected donations, included 300 pairs of eyeglasses were collected to redistribute, 1,800 pounds of clothing, just 50 bicycles were taken in to be distributed and given away to other people. So this is a real reuse event that we wanted to promote. One of the things in all the committees I'm involved in is we support this quote from Pete Seeger: if it can't be reduced, reused, repaired, rebuilt, refurbished, refinished, resold, recycled, or composted, then it should be restricted, redesigned, or removed from production. It says it all. These are some of the many volunteers that helped put that day on, and really thank everybody that was involved. If you go to the Town of Queensbury website, you'll see a lot of information on composting, some links to the EPA, DEC websites, different ways to get started in how to compost your organics. As Ethan had mentioned, 30+% of our waste stream is actually organics or food scraps. And going into a landfill creates a tremendous amount of methane, which is one of the greenhouse gases that are very harmful. Last year, we also had a compost bin sale. You basically went on the Queensbury website, you ordered it, paid for it, and then you picked it up. This was done by a third-party person that actually runs his business and does this. And people came and picked up their compost bins that they purchased on a Saturday morning. The NYSERDA created a new program in 2021, the Clean Energy Communities Leadership Program. And basically the town of Queensbury was recognized as having completed both programs with the goals that had been set by NYSERDA. Electric vehicles, all the car dealers in the region were contacted and asked to participate. All of them did, and basically they gave us the listing of all the sales of electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, both used and new, that were sold or were sold to Queensbury residents. So we reached that goal and received $5,000 for that. The solar farm community campaign, you can still go onto the Queensbury website and sign up. There are 4 solar vendors there. Basically, you receive 10% discount on your electricity through National Grid every month. So it's an ongoing program. We encourage people to do it. Basically, it's just 10% off your electricity, and it's no real commitment other than you sign and you can get out if you want. But that is still available on the Queensbury website to participate in. I wanted to just mention too, with that $10,000, the town was awarded $5,000 for each one of those community campaigns. The CEC-CSC committee decided that they wanted that money to be put towards the replacement, retrofit of all the streetlights in the town of Queensbury with LED bulbs. There are about 1,000, and the town board has started talking and interviewing potential vendors that would be doing that conversion of those streetlights, and that will save a lot of money for the town and a lot of greenhouse gas and fossil fuel use. Recent discussions by the committee, we're talking about community composting, whether it's drop off or pickup. There's a local vendor that's offering a program of that. Several of us went up to Camp Treetops up in Lake Placid and visited this vessel composter. It's a very unique item that John Culpepper had developed. It's 40 feet long, and basically where you see on the left-hand side, she's putting in the food scraps and then the browns, and they happen to use wood pellets because that's what Camp Treetops heats with, so they have them available. And then you turn the drum several turns, and it has to maintain a certain heat. And within several weeks, it comes out the other end as compost, and it's beautiful compost, and it's a really neat, a very neat way and enclosed, contained way to compost organics. This can fit into a tractor trailer. This happens to be in a shed. With the bronze certification, the greenhouse gas inventory was completed by the town of Queensberry, and this is a prerequisite to developing a climate action plan, which is in discussion and hopefully in the works very shortly. The committee has been very interested in tree planting, possibly doing the town tree survey. The importance of trees around us is, we just keep talking about it, trying to decide what we want to do with it. It's interesting that our last several meetings, we've been talking about emergency preparedness and cooling stations and go bags. You can see a go bag that Pema put together, one of our committee members. So this invitation to join you tonight was it was really apropos because we had just been discussing all these things. And now I've met the people that are actually working on it as well. We have been talking about a reuse shed, possibly at the Ridge Road transfer station. Again, this is some place that people can drop off products, small appliances, all kinds of things that they no longer need, and other people can come and pick them up. And this kind of goes hand in hand with that reuse recycle day that we had done last June and hope to do again in the future. And we are talking about potentially adopting a New York Stretch Energy Code. We'd like all the regional building departments to also, and counties and towns to also adopt this. This may become code for New York State in the future, and there are some financial incentives if we sign up prior to that becoming mandatory. And this is one of the pledge elements that helped promote the recognition of bronze certification for the town of Queensberry. This is promoting walking trails, biking, reducing vehicle use, and also just getting people outside. And this was one of them that we applied for. The town's been participating in these sustainable programs for many, many years. Again, this is just the group, several of the committee members, and that are showing off their recognition from the bronze certification from the Climate Smart Communities program in 2021. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. Sorry, I'm gonna get your slides up.
Yeah, I was coming around the other way anyway.
Gotcha.
So I am also a Climate Smart Communities person for Glens Falls, and that I like the halfway book trail because that's Glens Falls and Queensberry working together, which some said couldn't be done. So I'm just going to talk about, I had some other stuff, but I'm just going to stick to this deck. It's just some of the sustainability committee projects going on in Glens Falls. So the first slide is a microgrid project, and the city got a grant. This was kind of when the city sustainability consultant came on, Jeff Flagg. He went to the mayor and said he had this great idea for a microgrid, and he rates grants. He rates grants. That's a hard word. He rates grants, and he wrote a grant, got a $100,000 grant for the city to do a feasibility study, and the feasibility study went well, but the state wanted some stuff that they could stick a shovel in the ground with. Microgrids, for those who are interested, provide power for public safety and public health as a mitigation to power fluctuations and instability that we've talked about with climate change. So next, all right, I can just do it. Okay. So clean energy communities, Kathy was just talking about that. That's that is both the town and the city got into the game first, looking at clean energy communities things. So just taking off some of the things that we had up there. I don't have the nice pretty pictures. I just have boring text. So we did some benchmarking in municipal buildings. We did clean feeds. We bought some vehicles, so we're a little bit ahead of the county. We got a couple of them for our buildings and codes, and I think we got some trucks or a minivan. We got as well as Queensbury, got the bronze certification. I have in the packet, if people want to go through what the certification looks like, it's got the different steps, but we don't need to go over that right now. Excuse me. We have PACE financing, which is property assessed clean energy. So it's just different ways of getting a little bit of extra money in to help pay for clean energy as opposed to more gas and oil. And we did a unified solar permit. We also did an LED street lighting conversion project. We went through it like pretty hard. We did like $1 million interest-free loan through NYSERDA, or actually through NYPA, to go through, purchase all of our lights because we were leasing them from National Grid, and then replacing them with LED lights, and most of them are dark side compliant, because light pollution was also something that we were concerned with. We've had energy savings of about 80%, which has basically paid the principal back with a little bit of extra savings. So we did it in a revenue neutral way. And the new lights were incorporating smart technology so that we can go and say, these places don't really have anybody to walk by, so we'll just cut this off at this time. And further reduce the amount of energy that we're using. So moving right along. Maybe that's the wrong thing. Oh, that's it. Oh, I've done it. Oh, here we go. Okay. I could probably stand to get like clicker training. So this is kind of a cool thing that we're in process of right now. To do some, one of the stresses for climate change is on farmers. And this was, another thing is a lot of businesses, we have a lot of downtown spaces that are available because of the pandemic, especially. So this pilot project is to do urban vertical farming. So it's basically these trays of greens and other quick growing, energy intensive crop grown in a box. And then we could take this box and disassemble it and reassemble it in another place as this place might become back on the market. So if this could be done over a short term and then turned around and moved around. We got a pilot program going that's fueled by a Smart Cities Innovation Grant, which I think Queensbury's had some innovation grants too. We're doing it currently. It's set up above pharmacy in downtown Glens Falls on the 3rd floor. And it's going to, one of the cool things with it is you could get a salad at pharmacy after the place is starting to go. And in other restaurants around Glens Falls. So we're partnering with Renewable, which is a New York City-based renewability and sustainability firm. We also have grants from National Grid because National Grid's interested in it because it's using quite a bit of power to get the optimal amount of heat and air flowing through and water. And so it's a utility, they're really happy with it to be able to do something like that. But it's also kind of just like taking the power that we have and using it to create food. And that becomes like a battery in and of itself. So anyway, just that's about it. And I will see you remaining to Claudia.
Get this one up.
Don't worry, I have a very short presentation. I know there are questions that I can't answer. Thank you very much, Dan, for putting together this great presentation. I think it's very important, and I thank all of my co-panelists for being here tonight and giving your time and giving your expertise all through the year to work on this issue. Dr. Leach, thank you so much for your information on the public health impacts. That's really important because that's not something I have studied a whole lot. But I can say that I graduated from Penn State 20 years ago and I was studying climate change. And I learned the importance of the environment changing and that it was something that it was an emergency then and it is so much more now. And I can say like Greta, that I am very frustrated that we are not doing more, that we haven't done more over the last decades to protect our natural resources as well as protect our children and our children's children, as well as ourselves, our own futures. So I now am a local elected and I am determined to keep us moving forward and to continue taking actions. And that's what I try to do on the Morgan County Board of Supervisors in conjunction with local partners and our state partners. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit. New York State is leading the way, and I think it's our responsibility to lead the way. As we've already heard, New York is one of the biggest emitters in the entire world. So we really do have a responsibility to take action, and we have several different state agencies, including we've already heard about the New York State DEC, as well as NYSERDA, which for those who don't know is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. And they have been doing a lot to help move communities forward on climate action. And then now Department of Health is finally, taking more interest in this topic and how it impacts our public health. I'm going to go through the whole slide. For people who don't know, the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act was passed in 2019. It was really a groundbreaking legislation for the country to set a framework for achieving the carbon-free electricity system by 2040 and reducing greenhouse gas emissions 85% below our 1990 levels by 2050. So those are really our goals. And it is seeking to protect both public health and quality of life, as well as protecting our natural resources. Those are the driving goals behind that legislation. And how it is being implemented going forward is through the State Climate Action Council. There are 22 appointed members to this council. They also have advisory panels on various subject matters. Two of the biggest ones, of course, are energy production and transportation. As we've heard already, transportation is a huge carbon emitter that we need to deal with. Recently, the State Climate Action Council came out with their scoping plan, which are more of the details of how we are going to implement and get to the goals that we have set in the legislation. And they are taking public comment right now. It's a written comment period. And there are also, which I didn't put on the slides, but I want to mention now that there are public hearings happening next week, Thursday, April 14th in Albany. There will be a virtual hearing Saturday, May 7th and May 11th. And then there's also, I just picked the ones that are closest to us. Tuesday, May 10th, there's one at the Wild Center in Tupper Lake, if anyone wants to take a little drive up there. So I think it's really important. I see a lot of people in the audience who are already very knowledgeable on this issue, and I hope that you will write to the climate urgency about moving forward.
Yep, I got you.
So I'm on this New York State Association of Counties Climate Action Standing Committee. The New York State Association of Counties it's basically an advocacy group of all the counties in the state. And I really see the counties and our local government, local municipalities as the ones who have to do a lot of the public facing work around climate impacts. Like we heard from Anne Marie, our emergency director, when issues happen, it's the counties and our local governments who are having to respond to that. So what we are asking for through a resolution that I drafted and was passed by our resolutions committee and through the entire conference just last month, was asking for additional technical assistance and obviously funding. They're giving a lot of money already through DEC and NYSERDA, but we want more money so that we can continue taking more actions at the local level. Another resolution that we passed was about, we heard the Zero Waste Committee about making sure that solar panels going forward are made of recyclable materials. Because we don't want to end up at the end of the life cycle of the solar panels having all this waste that can't be recycled and has to go to landfills. And the old solar panels actually have hazardous waste materials in them. So it's really going to be a problem when those things start getting decommissioned and coming offline. And then I'll be continuing to advocate to the state level for additional resources, like I've already mentioned. That's okay. Comprehensive plans that include climate resiliency, adaptation, and emergency response. Things we've already talked about tonight. And so lastly, I'm not going to go through all those things. They're all things in the past. Ian Gabby has already talked about the stuff that we're working on for 2022 and going into the future. But this is how we got to Warren County also being bronze level climate smart communities. And if anybody has questions or wants help bringing that to your own municipalities, certainly reach out to me, reach out to Ethan, reach out to Gabby, and reach out to Ben, because we're really working with the people on the ground to make that happen. And lastly, I want to encourage you all, like I said, and others have said, please get involved, take action. There's our own Solarize campaign, I believe, is still going on. You can still sign up. You can also go to solarizealbany.org to look at some information about how you can sign up for heat pumps and that kind of thing. And making sure that you're advocating to your local municipal elected leaders and people in Warren County and Washington County and our surrounding areas to take action. I'll leave this quote to all of you. Unless someone like you cares a whole lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So please, everyone, we are responsible for this problem and we can undo it. Let's get to it. Thank you.
So we are going to do a question and answer period, but I want to apologize first of all to my panelists. I did not realize the topics and how long and how much information you got. This could be like a 3-day conference if we really wanted to. So I want to apologize for pushing you into such a tight window. It's my first foray into this. It's been 2 years since we did a public planning one of these, so I definitely have to refine my skills a little bit more. But with that, I do want to give everybody an opportunity who has a question to ask them. So I know you have one early on, so I'll break that.
Can I come up?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Pamela Reed, and I work with Queensberry Clean Energy Climate Smart Communities. And there's a team of about 5 of us who've been really active, and we are extremely concerned about the climate crisis. And so I just wanted to say that this is extremely important. We need to do it for the public. Education is such an important part of it. And we need to involve the citizens. I was in earthquakes in San Francisco with packs in the car for emergency exodus. I was in a major earthquake in Assisi in Italy in '88, and we ended up helping the military to feed the neighboring villages that are all made of stone, and everything collapsed. Nothing was safe to go in. Some of these ancient medieval towns. So the military set up food centers where they were cooking huge pots of food that we would take to these villages, and tents everywhere. Are we anywhere near that? We may not need that because we don't have those kind of houses, but I wanted to say, Dr. Leach, you're so right on. We really need to work more closely with you because we understand that this is an imminent crisis. And I had a question for you specifically, which all the tick-borne diseases, I believe, they are viruses, right, that stay within your system? No. Okay.
No, various microbes.
Okay. And the second one is, no one really mentioned local pollution, which is a definite contributing factor to cancer and asthma And no one mentioned being political or correct, Finch Prine or the Lehigh Cement Company or the Wheelabrator burn plant, which is burning everything even from other areas. And there's a toxic sludge that comes out that farmers are told that it would be good compost for their fields. In fact, it's a really bad deal.
Ma'am, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're
Sorry.
looking, everybody needs a chance to have questions, or we're getting late. So if you have another question for Dr.
Just,
Lee? I don't want to cut you off, but I want to give
Okay.
everybody an opportunity, and I know we all want a platform.
all I
but right
want to
now-
say is that we really want to, our team really wants to work with you all. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. Yep, go right here. Yep.
Lisa Adamson,
Lisa, nice to see you.
Queensbury, CSC, our country heard that. My question is for you, Claudia. Two questions. I didn't understand what you said is the connective thing that you're doing in the new committee that you're on. And I'm interested in what that function is because I'm very worried about how slow we're moving as municipal and county entities to implement what we've got to implement for the CLCPA and for climate change. But anyway, you said there was some function that you're doing that you're connecting municipalities with
Is it the
actions.
new? Yeah, if you want, yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
Does that thing move?
yeah, oh yeah, that's wireless. I can bring it over to you.
I think it was your
That's okay.
last.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Well, I can certainly follow up with you offline.
Yeah.
I think part of it is the NISAC, our county committee, we do a lot of lobbying between the county up to the state level. So that's where I'm trying to bring some more of that knowledge from on the ground to the county and local governments up through that NISAC organization to the state level to make sure that they understand the problems that we are having when we go to implement the stuff that they are passing at the state level.
Okay.
But it is slow. I agree with you, and we need to make sure that they understand some of the impacts on implementation, aside from climate change. I think DEC understands that. It's just slow.
Well, we have to understand it locally too.
That's true. That's why we're having this. And it's live streamed, so people can share it later.
Ben, yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Ben Driscoll, I'm a resident of Glens Falls and also a colleague of Claudia's on the Warren County Board of Supervisors. My question is, I've got loved ones, friends and colleagues who see climate change and clean energy under a different lens than I do. And I guess I'm looking for the talking points or the way to engage those individuals in conversation, not confrontational conversation, and begin to talk about it, or else I'm afraid that it's only going to be us against them, or individuals who share one opinion, and try to politicize it. Talk about the fact that if you're for climate change and clean energy, you're anti-business, you're anti-jobs in the area. So I guess I'm just looking for those wordsmiths out there to share some strategies for that.
Yeah, I think at the county level, our initiatives I mentioned are aimed at, looking at the environment and then having physical impacts as well. So we're doing organics management plans like, hey, we can reduce the amount of waste that we truck and burn, we're going to be saving money in tippage fees. If we convert our municipal fleet to electric vehicles, that's financially responsible because you have less wear and tear, you have a longer life of an electric vehicle. So less maintenance, less fuel. So at the end of the day, this is all, we're saving taxpayer dollars. Even if you disregard all the community and environmental benefits of these things, it's just a fiscally responsible thing to do. You look at active transportation, it's a public health imperative as well. Lower rates of obesity, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, that's good for everybody. And that reduces, especially, a lot of people employed in the public sector, they're all paying for those healthcare costs.
And it's also just with regard to the, complete streets, this is something that's been adopted on a federal level and on a state level and on municipal levels, and nobody's really been bringing it across. It's like people walk the walk, and it's up to us to talk, or like they talk the talk. We gotta walk the walk. That was doing.
As you know, in 2019, the Warren County Board of Supervisors passed the Climate Smart Communities Pledge. And I helped lead that effort as a minority member from a political standpoint. But I think one of the messages that I keep saying to people of all political spectrums is that this is even if they don't care about CO2 levels, they care about reducing pollution in the environment. So you just tell them this is a way to help make sure that our environment is clean, which is an economic driver for Warren County. And as we reduce emissions and pollution into the air, it's helping public health. When I say that, people kind of get it.
I got a couple of contributions to that. This is an extraordinarily difficult topic because you're talking about you're talking about individual conversations with people perhaps you're related to, and you have extremely different. And then on the other hand, we have people in public places who have to deal with hecklers and the like. Just coincidentally, the Union of Concerned Scientists, which I think probably most people know about this organization, fabulous organization, please pay attention to it if you don't know it, have been putting on today and tomorrow a 4-hour each day training session on exactly this subject. And I spent a little time with it this afternoon. It's given by one of the most spectacular presenters, a very young woman that I just couldn't believe she didn't take a break for 4 hours. And she was all over the place in terms of her dynamism. It's fabulous. I would recommend to you then to go to their website and look that up because it's online. It's not just something that you had to zoom into. So the Union of Concerned Scientists, and the exact name of it was Defense Against Disinformation, Strategic Communications for Advocates.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? You got it, Linda? Go ahead.
A real shorty to Anne Marie. We have a problem up in Lake George, which seems to be recurring harmful algal blooms. And I was wondering, is there a way to get that on your alert system? And then we could advertise to people how to get that.
Yeah, so Dan was just mentioning that DEC does some with that. But if it's something it keeps recurring, maybe we can possibly look at adding something as we go through and update our hazard mitigation plan. If we can possibly pick a piece of that up in there, that would also help with that.
Thank you. I'm sure it's on other lakes too.
I believe the New York State Department of Health puts it out. I camp on Lake Champlain, and whenever one occurs, close to beaches, they'll notify folks of it. So I think the Department of Health actually may have something on it too with alerts. So that's something more we can look at as well.
It's the alert, the notification that's really critical.
Right, and I think that's definitely they do put it out at least locally where I am in Port Henry, Shallow Bays. It's almost immediate and kind of goes out that way. So that's what I'm looking to. Any other questions? All right. I've had two friends sitting in the back. They are new health educators. They were recently hired their job today to monitor the online. Any questions back there?
So we actually only have one.
Yeah.
They're just wondering if
This will be archived online. So this presentation, the slides, they can reach out to us, and as long as you're okay with me sharing them, we're willing to share them electronically with anybody. Again, we'll cut down on paper waste and get them there in electronic files. Everybody provided me with a copy of their slides. So for me, all I need is a valid email address, and I can get those out, even tomorrow. So that would be what we have there. And for those of you, again, if you would like them here and when you're in the audience, we have a little sign-in sheet that you can just put your name and email address, and we can share the slides as well. We're able to put these out for you. And finally, I want to thank everybody for coming out. I know it was nasty weather. This is the first time I'm learning to get back in the public eye, in terms of how these things need to be planned. So next time it's 2 hours, not an hour and a half. So I don't have to force people off their speaking points. I do apologize to my panelists, but with that underway, I have a lot of climate change materials and things. We'll turn on the light so you can see. And I was told to bring COVID home test if you'd so like one, because we have lots of those too. So I'm going to do a purpose, as my director said, please look for people to take those as well. So thank you all again. I apologize for the shortness, but hopefully we'll get this thing off the ground and do a little bit more. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Dr.
I've been happy to play a very, very small